Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Star Secrets. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dehne Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. And we're here to help you find your way around the sky.
Stars are not always what they seem. Most stars in the sky are really 2, 3, or more stars orbiting each other. Many stars wildly fluctuate in brightness. They're all different colors and temperatures. Some are newly born and others are nearing their dramatic demise.
This week, we're going to look at 3 stars in the fall sky with hidden secrets. The first star is actually 2 beautifully colored stars in a small telescope.
The second star will make your head spin.
And the third is a lonely star with a funny name that gave astronomers a big planetary surprise. As our telescopes get better and better, we're uncovering the mysterious nature of stars trillions of miles away.
Let us introduce you to the stars Albireo, Altair, and Fomalhaut.
Okay, we have our skies set to 10 p.m. this month looking west. The most prominent feature is the summer triangle. Look for 3 really bright stars in the sky and you've found it.
The 3 stars are called Vega, Altair, and Deneb.
Now, Deneb is supposed to be the bright tail of the constellation Cygnus the Swan, but we're going to zoom in on the fainter head star visible within the summer triangle.
This is a star called Albireo, and it's one of my favorite stars to look at with a small telescope. When you look closer at Albireo, you'll find it's really a double star, 2 stars orbiting each other. The bigger one is orange in color and the smaller one is brilliant blue. The contrasting colors make a cool and hot sight to see because this tells us their contrasting temperatures. The bluer, the hotter, the oranger, the cooler. They're like 2 beautiful sparkling jewels in the night sky.
Now, let's get back to the star Altair and its hidden secret. Altair looks like any ordinary bright white star, but it is one of the closest stars to us at only 17 light years away.
And because it's relatively close, astronomers could uncover Altair's secret, its mind-boggling rotational rate.
Meaning it spins really fast.
Our sun spins as well. The sun rotates about 2 kilometers per second at its equator, so it takes about 25 days for the sun to spin once. Now, let's compare our sun to Altair. Altair is almost twice as big as the sun and shines 11 times brighter. But hold on to your seats, this star spins super fast. At the equator, Altair rotates at about 286 kilometers per second. That means that the entire star spins once every 9 hours.
This unbelievable rotational velocity has actually affected the shape of this star. Instead of a sphere, Altair is squished at the poles and bulges at the equator. The entire mass of the star has shifted and has left Altair looking like a rapidly spinning egg.
Next, let's look south at 10 p.m. where you'll see only 1 bright star. This is Fomalhaut, the brightest star in the constellation of Piscis Australis, or the southern fish.
With a little imagination, you can make out a goldfish shape in these stars with Fomalhaut as one beady eye. Cute.
Fomalhaut is a blue-white star 25 light years away, making it another close target to observe with the best telescopes. In 2004, astronomers detected a dust ring around Fomalhaut.
We call it protoplanetary debris.
Or just a big ring of stuff, and everyone got excited. This was the kind of stuff that might harbor a planet or even a whole solar system.
And then in 2008, astronomers caught the first visible light image of a planet orbiting around another star, orbiting around Fomalhaut. You have to really squint, but there it is. So check out Fomalhaut tonight, the lone star in the south.
That's not so lonely after all.
Find rapidly rotating Altair in the western sky on the left side of the summer triangle.
And don't forget to train your telescopes on Albireo to discover its second sun. When you look at the stars above, who knows what other hidden secrets you'll discover when you keep looking up.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And now into your aviation forecast. And as you can see here for Friday morning, the IFR conditions are going to be mainly where all that moisture is moving up across the Bering Sea and then again into the west coast, the Seward Peninsula there, and then starting to stretch out up into the Yukon and Tanana valleys. So IFR conditions in there. Some IFR conditions will continue along the Arctic coastline as well with that blowing snow, those stronger winds up there. And the MVFR conditions will stretch out all the way along the Beaufort Sea coast. MVFR conditions will continue off towards the Alcan border there with snow and lower ceilings, creating some problems there. And then the MVFR conditions across the Gulf, primarily out over the open water, keeping southeast Alaska mostly in the VFR and south central Alaska. Some patchy fog tomorrow, MVFR in the morning, but should be improving by the time we get to tomorrow afternoon. The IFR conditions, however, will not change a whole lot tomorrow afternoon. They will continue to be out there along the west coast, especially along the Seward Peninsula and down there in Kuskokwim Bay area, and then up along the portions of the Brooks Range and stretching up along the Arctic coast as well. Continue to see that IFR conditions, blowing snow, low ceilings. When you bring that warm air over this colder air, it tends to create some serious problems when it comes to visibility and ceilings. And then along southeast Alaska, still looking for VFR conditions down there. And as we go into Saturday, that trend will continue. Also VFR conditions for south central Alaska. As we look off towards the west coast, that's where we'll continue to see our biggest swath of IFR, and then just a patch of IFR there just to the east of Barrow and Prudhoe Bay. As we look on into Saturday afternoon, the IFR starts to track inland a little bit further, making its way towards the center of the state. Another batch of IFR starting to move up there into the Alaska Peninsula, and then a fairly wide swath of MVFR conditions starting to move across much of the state as that warm air continues to try to penetrate all the way into the surface and create those lower ceilings by Saturday afternoon. So what does that mean for our passes? Well, how about in Atuvik? And then we're going to be MVFR conditions there. We'll also be MVFR at Adigan, with that warm air coming in. Lake Clark and Merrill should be improving tomorrow with the MVFR early on and then becoming VFR late in the day. Rainy will be IFR to start the day again with that fog, but should be improving through the day to MVFR. Windy will be MVFR through the day. Isabel will be marginal visual flight rules through the day. And Mentasta improving from visual flight rules to marginal visual flight rules. Tanita, same story there. And for Portage, they should be VFR except on the east entrance, starting out with MVFR due to that fog in the area. And Chilkoot and White Pass should be VFR through the day with the offshore flow keeping things dry and quite nice down there. As we look towards the freezing levels now, you can see again that surface line hugging along the coastline here and working mainly right along the Gulf Coast. Not quite as much warm air surging up over the state as we saw yesterday for Friday now, but looking at freezing levels fairly tightly packed, so the warm air just mainly along the coastal areas, possibly causing a little bit of a mixed precipitation into portions of Bristol Bay and southwest Alaska, but otherwise fairly normal freezing levels for this time of year. And that means for our icing that we're going to generally see it where that moisture stream feeds all the way up and over top of that ridge, and it's going to kind of be that general trend from higher at 8,000 feet, still above 8,000 as it gets towards the coast, but then all the way down to 2,000 and closer to 4,000 feet, just some patchy spots of isolated moderate there along the Alcan border. For our jet stream, we're looking at it coming into the area at about 110 knots, diving down at 60 knots, and then coming back and up and over this ridge of high pressure at about 100 knots. And the strongest portion here is over southeast Alaska at about 130 knots, just really helping to kind of reinforce that northerly wind there, and then diving into the lower 48 at about 115 knots, another weak finger there at 100 knots. So how does that look at 9,000 feet? Well, you can see generally in support of this low out here, and then the high over the state and the high down to the south of the Gulf of Alaska there. So we've got southerly winds pushing through much of the Bering, all the way up to 40 knots there. And then as we look towards the portions of the Gulf, we're strong northwest winds coming through the gaps here, 25 knots becoming 35 knots, and then out over the southeastern portion of the state, 25 knots out of the north. For the northern portion of the state, that's where we have the strongest 55 knots at 9,000 feet from northwest to basically the east. Similar story here at 3,000 feet, 45 knots across the Brooks Range out of the west to the east. And then as we get over towards the Bering, you can see that southerly flow continues at about 35 knots. Still looking for west to northerly flow for much of the Gulf of Alaska and the southeastern portion of the state. So we'll focus our turbulence up here. Some isolated, some considerable moderate below 4,000 feet there north of the Brooks Range, and otherwise just through the bays and passes below 4,000 feet. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now it's time for your marine forecast. You can see here with sea surface temperatures this afternoon that we have quite a bit of warm water that is trying to surge up there into the Bering Strait. Even some temperatures above freezing up here towards the outside of the Kotzebue and Barrow area. So those temperatures are generally in the maybe mid to upper 30s, and so we're watching as that tries to impinge upon the sea ice edge. Let me slide back and forth here a little bit more. So that warmer water is starting to kind of make its way in here with that strong westerly flow, and so with that helping to keep the ice from growing altogether too quickly, but it is helping to push some of that marginal ice pack a little bit closer to the pack ice. And so as those winds continue, that will be the story. But as those winds come down this weekend, we do expect this area to start to congeal pretty quickly with colder temperatures, calmer winds. As you'd expect, the sea ice should grow. How about for southeast Alaska into Friday? Well, we generally have that northerly wind. It's going to be a little bit calmer, relative lull in the pattern on Friday for you in southeast. So generally north winds 15 all the way down to 5 miles an hour by the Dixon entrance there. Seas 2 to 3 feet. Out over the open waters, generally out of the north or northwest 10 to 20, and seas between 6 and 8 feet. And then for southeast on Saturday, expect a little bit stronger increase here. Again, once again, we have that northerly flow going to be up in the 25 to 30 mile an hour, or 30 knot range sustained, but gusts out of Lynn Canal to 45 and there near Stevens Passage near 40, all out of the north, and winds will help the seas to pick up 5 to 6 feet. Out of the northeast and north for the open waters, 10 to 25 knots, and on the 6 to 7 foot seas. For the south central area, you can expect an offshore flow pattern, so north through Cook Inlet, becoming northwest there for the Barrens, and northwest for Prince William Sound, generally between 10 and 30 knots, and seas climbing once you get outside of the protected areas up to 7 feet. And then on into Saturday, a little bit more variable winds, fairly light, 10 to 15 knots across the area, and seas between 2 and 4 feet. For the Alaska Peninsula, expect kind of that offshore flow pattern to continue for those areas on Friday. Generally a north wind through Bristol Bay at about 10 knots, but more westerly, 10 to 20 knots near Kodiak Island, and expect the seas to run between 4 and 6 feet. And on into Saturday, again, more variable winds here near Kodiak and the northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula, and so 10 to 15 knots, seas 2 to 5 feet, and then a little bit more east and southeast, 15 to 20, seas climbing up to 8 feet there towards the Alaska Peninsula, the western side of the Alaska Peninsula. How about for the Aleutians? Well, that frontal boundary is going to be right through there, so you can expect easterly winds 15 to 20, seas about 6 to 9 feet east of the front, and then more west and north winds 15 to 20, seas 8 to 11 feet. And our high starts to build back in on Saturday, so again, pushing that wind in a clockwise direction, 20 to 25 knots, and seas generally between 6 and 10 feet on Saturday. For the west coast, you can expect southeast and south winds becoming a little bit more easterly up towards Savunga there, and that's going to be 10 to 20 knots and seas between 3 and 7 feet. And then on into Saturday, that's where we start to see our next system push in from the west that we talked about there on the surface maps. 30 knots just south of Savunga at about 9 foot seas, and then more of a confused west-northwest flow, 15 to 25 knots, seas 5 to 8 feet down towards the Pribilof Islands. And then up along the Arctic coastline, still stout winds on Friday expected along the coastline there, 30 to 40 knots, and seas all the way up to 11 feet. And we do have that high surf advisory still in effect for Barrow. And then along the west coast, a little bit more towards the Seward Peninsula, generally a west wind 10 to 30 knots and seas between 6 and 11 feet. On into Saturday, the Arctic coast is going to see a switch in the wind direction, becoming a little bit more east and southeast, but still pretty strong as that next system approaches. 10 to 30 knots and seas back up to 9 feet there just off the Seward Peninsula. And towards the Kaktovik area, expect northwest 20 knots and seas about 6 feet. So let's recap the weather then, looking at that moisture stream continuing to feed up and over this ridge of high pressure and into the northern portion of the state, bringing more snowfall tonight along the Arctic coastline for the interior portions of the state. And we do have plenty of winter weather advisories and some winter storm warnings for addressing those conditions up there. Fog will continue for the southern half of the state and fairly calm weather for southeast Alaska. On into Friday, weather will remain pretty quiet for southeast Alaska, but we'll be watching this next system develop and take a very similar track over this ridge of high pressure, while snow will continue for the Arctic coastline there even on Friday. And then as we get towards Saturday, these two systems start to link up and bring another round of precipitation from rain to snow into western Alaska. Thanks for watching this evening. I hope you have a great night. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meteorologist Mike Ottenweller, and you have tuned in to Your Alaska Weather, brought to you by the National Weather Service. And tonight is November 2nd, 2017. And as always, if you need to get in touch with us, 1-800-472-0391. Lots of winter weather starting to pick up around the state, so if you need to call for more details, that number will connect you to the automated line. It will also allow you to get to any of the 3 offices across the state: Juneau, Fairbanks, or Anchorage. Also, you can get a hold of us online, weather.gov/Alaska, or just ARH, and that will get you a regional perspective as well. And then if you need to get in touch with us here at the TV desk specifically, you can use an email, nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov, and one of us that are on the desk will be happy to respond to you. So let's take a look at what's going on with our headlines. Well, for those of you up north, the winter weather is in, and it will continue to be in. Basically, divide the state in half from north to south, and everything north basically of the Alaska range is experiencing a fairly heavy bit of winter weather, some rain snow mix, some blowing snow, and some accumulating snow. So we'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. Fog continues over southern Alaska, basically stretching from southwest over to south central Alaska, and it has been thick in spots. Starting to clear out a little bit this morning, but still pretty dense out there, and we'll discuss that here in a little bit as well. Winds diminishing for southeast Alaska. Things have been gusty out of the north, but we will see those winds taper off as we go through the next couple days. And how about our snow threat into the weekend? Well, we'll talk about that as well as we get into our surface maps. So let's start out with our hazard map, and you can see the suite of winter weather advisories in yellow and some dense fog advisories. These are, however, going to be dropping this afternoon and this evening, so we just expect some patchy fog. These should be gone this evening. As we look out towards the west coast there, we do have a winter storm warning, and this is in effect until 6 p.m. tonight. This continues to be the accumulating snow and possibility of some blowing snow, but mostly accumulating snow here near the Noatak area, Red Dog Mine. And so for those folks out traveling in those areas, be advised that is in effect until 6 p.m. It has been raining a little bit more towards the coastline there, so the warning has been allowed to drop for that area. Up towards the north slope, that's where we have seen more blowing snow conditions. Still accumulating snow, but blowing snow is really the hazard there. So visibility is a half mile or less at times, and be advised for those traveling out in that area. And then mainly from the Alaska Range northward, that's where we have our winter weather advisory. A variety of advisories, that's a hard thing to say, variety of advisories with various ending times and various snow amounts. So check your local forecast office, the Fairbanks office, to get some more details on that. Generally, most of these will expire Friday afternoon, but various times once again. So that is our hazards. How about our satellite? Let's take a look here as we put this into motion. So basically what we've got going on, folks, is that there's a ridge of high pressure centered kind of here over southwest Alaska. There's an extension of it up into the southern portion of the state, but mainly over the Gulf of Alaska, southwest Alaska. You can see the clear skies there. What that ridge is doing is allowing moisture and warm air to ride up and over it from southwest to northeast. And so when we see that happen, what happens is that moisture feed just basically comes over top of the cold air and really allows for plenty of precipitation to fall out of it, some rain snow mix, And then really what's happening down towards the southern portion of the state is that is putting a lid, high pressure puts a lid on the atmosphere, and basically any moisture that's at the surface can get trapped, hence fog. So let's look at that again. I'm going to slide over to the other side so you can get a better view of how that moisture is riding up and over that ridge, and some of that moisture moving into the northern portion of the state as well, where those stronger winds are pushing it from west to east. As we look towards southeast Alaska, let's loop it one more time. And you can see there that offshore flow continues, keeping conditions fairly nice for much of southeast Alaska, allowing for mostly sunny conditions, maybe a little bit more cloud cover up towards Juneau and Yakutat. But one more loop here, and you can see that area of moisture just continues to plume up, and we do have another area of low pressure that we'll talk about here making its way in from the west, and that will be a player as we go forward for the next couple days. So how's that surface map look? Well, starting out in the west, there's our area of low pressure out there at 1,005 millibars, still well off to the west of the Bering Sea, but it is starting to make its track towards the Bering, so we'll be keeping an eye on that feature. The more impacting feature for this evening and for today is this area of rain that becomes a rain-snow mix, and then eventually becomes all snow as you get up towards the Noatak area and the Red Dog Mine areas we talked about. So henceforth, the winter storm warning and winter weather advisories. There we have the blowing snow, various pieces of energy really just helping to ferry that moisture up through the middle portion of the northern portion of the state. Some snow showers also being reported towards the interior portion of the state, but those have been a little bit lighter in nature and have not quite been as widespread as what we've seen farther to the north. And then plenty of fog and some freezing fog, making for some slick conditions out there, stretching all the way from the Cook Inlet, the Mat-Su Valley, southern Susitna Valley, and all the way down towards the southwest Alaska. Again, this should be diminishing through the evening, so those advisories have expired. As we look towards southeast Alaska for the afternoon, you can see there pretty clear conditions for the most part, just some patchy clouds. You can see that cold offshore flow reflected there in the satellite image. You can see those kind of freckly, pockmarked looking clouds there. That's that cold air working out over the warm water. And so we have a dry cold front right up along the coast, and just cold air being pushed against basically the terrain there and allowing some stronger winds to continue to move through, but those are sliding off to the south. You'll see the tighter isobars packed down here and a little bit more open and widespread as you get to the north. So starting to see conditions improve for much of southeast Alaska. And into tonight, that really will continue. Some offshore showers, but not really expecting any precipitation for the inland areas. High pressure starting to push that area of low pressure further to the south, so the wind should continue to relax for you in southeast Alaska. How about for south central Alaska? Well, another foggy night on tap, but it should not be as dense as it has been. So again, expecting some fog tomorrow, but not nearly as dense in the morning hours as it has been the past couple days. Up towards the interior portion of the state, that's where we see our snow really gets going again tonight, and henceforth the winter weather advisories. And then along the Arctic coastline there, that's where we have plenty more snow and still those tightly packed isobars bringing in those gusty winds for you folks up there. As we look down towards southwest Alaska, high pressure continues to keep the fog trapped in for at least one more night here. Fog up and down the west coast. Fairbanks has actually also issued some dense fog advisories, so as if there wasn't enough weather going on, dense fog to accompany the winter weather. And then as we look towards the next area of moisture that starts to build in for tonight, that's where we see that weakening warm front. It's not going to bring a whole lot of warm air north with it, but there is plenty of warm air to the south, so that again helps to exacerbate those foggy conditions. Our next area of low pressure starts to work in from the west tonight at 1,003 millibars, and that will continue to track off to the east, and we'll watch and see how that develops as we go into Friday. Start to see some interaction here with this next storm system, and thus we're expecting another round of precipitation to move in. Should have a brief break in the day on Friday as high pressure settles in. Snow showers will continue for the eastern portion of the state. Patchy fog possible into the early portion of the day for the southern portion of the state, but those winter weather advisories are mostly set to expire by the afternoon time on Friday for you folks there in the Tanana Valley area in the interior portion. Up along the Arctic coastline, that's where we'll continue to see the blowing snow, possibly mixing with some rain at times, but the snow and blowing snow will continue up there. And then as we look over towards southeast Alaska, fairly quiet conditions, still possibility of some rain showers just offshore. Cloud cover will increase as the area of high pressure slides off to the east, and we start to see some more clouds work their way in from the north out over the interior portions of Canada. So then on into Saturday, well, that's where things are starting to get a little bit more interesting. We're starting to see this area of low pressure link up with some of that moisture coming up from the North Pacific. So as this system continues to develop and that moisture moves in, that's where we could see another round of fairly significant snowfalls, possibly mixing with some rain along the coast, certainly mixing with some rain along the coast towards southwest Bristol Bay areas and the YK Delta. But we're going to be watching how this snow propagates inland. Definitely would not rule out accumulating snow for just about anybody over interior locations at this time. And so we'll see how exactly how this unfolds. But for now, just expecting some snow on the front edge with some rain snow as it trails. That moisture will be moving up and bringing some rain, moderate at times, to the Alaska Peninsula. And for you folks in Southeast, well, the dry weather should continue for you down there, just maybe a little bit of patchy clouds there on Saturday, but not a bad way to start the weekend with a high at 1,032 millibars. So how about those temperatures for Southeast Alaska? Well, clear skies means you're going to radiate out and be quite chilly. So expect those temperatures in the mid-20s to upper 20s through the overnight into the morning hours on Friday. For the eastern portion of the state, expect temperatures anywhere from about single digits to the low to mid-20s. And then along the north slope, expect a little bit warmer conditions there with some open water. Still going to see conditions drop into the upper 20s. And that's where we have the warm air towards southwest Alaska, temperatures hovering around freezing, making for that kind of slushy conditions, messy conditions, a little bit warmer towards the Alaska Peninsula. On into Friday afternoon now, you can see generally in the mid-20s for the eastern portion of the state. Temperatures generally going to be in the low to mid-30s for the western portion of the state. And down by Bristol Bay, you can expect things a little bit warmer, down towards 40. And then for southeast Alaska, temperatures once again climbing to upper 30s and low 40s. We'll expect mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula. On Saturday morning, expect lows in the low 40s to upper 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, generally in the low 30s for much of southwest Alaska, and colder air with that high pressure allowing things to clear out, settling in over much of the interior with single digits, possibility of some low 20s for the Fairbanks region. For Saturday morning for southeast Alaska, you can expect temperatures near 30. And then for Saturday afternoon, temperatures should rebound over southeast Alaska into the mid-30s. We'll see generally low to mid-20s across.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.